Hello and welcome to Forever Sports, and it is URC playoff times, and three South African teams in the quarterfinals means that if we were to have the perfect weekend, we would basically be guaranteed a South African team in the final, and if all three South African teams were to progress, that would be a serious statement of intent. And to be honest, I don't think it's out of the realms of possibilities. The big sort of game for me is Stormers versus Glasgow, because I think Stormers are starting to trend in the right direction, but are playing away from home, and that's going to be a big impact for them. I think Bulls, if they were to lose to Edinburgh tomorrow, I think that would be a massive letdown. Leinster versus Scarlet, so they've avoided Leinster. And then Sharks at home, you've got to think that they can get a result. But this is a very inconsistent Sharks side. We're going to have a look at the fixtures, going to give my predictions, going to have a look at the Stormers side as well, given the fact that it has been named. The other side set to be named at some point today. We will be live for all South African games throughout the weekend, so make sure you come and join us on the watch longs. Please do smash a like on the video, by the way. And if you are new, subscribe to the channel as we really start to gear up for what is going to be a huge rugby season. We've got the Springboks kicking off in less than a month's time against the Barbarians, and I think we're in for what is going to be a fantastic season of rugby. Let's get into it, shall we? So, in terms of your fixtures, it all happens from tonight at the Scotstoun Stadium, 8:30 South African Standard Time. Glasgow Warriors will host the Stormers, the defending champions, hosting a side which peaks. I think it's peaking at the right time, to be honest. We've seen the Stormers really start to build a bit of momentum in the last month or two, and probably a little bit too late. I think frustratingly too late in terms of being able to book that quarterfinal at home. I think if this was at Cape Town tonight and the Warriors were driving down here, I think Stormers would have an edge, and I think they'd be the favourites going into the game. At this stage, for me, it's very much Glasgow Warriors as the favourites. But if you look at the Stormers side that they have named, it's nice and strong. Obviously, no Damian Willemse is a huge loss, and but if you look at the front row, for example, I do think that they're short a loose head, and I think that they're struggling a bit there, but they have been very good, even when they've had their different sort of props. So, Ali from Mark, Anthony, Hugo, Fenton, Nettling, Bashir, it's not a bad front row. It's not quite Francois Herbert, and obviously Stephen Kitshoff continues to be a huge loss in the side. They're going to have to look to replace him next season, which they have with Ntuko Kunu. But Salman Ruben van Heerden, it's your top lock pairing, really. You've then got Jay Schickling coming off the bench, so nice depth there. Paul de Villiers has been absolutely brilliant in the last few weeks. Marcus Tennis and Evan Ruiz, it's a nice loose trio. Stefan Ungo getting the nod is an interesting one. I think Herschel Yankees is being back to kind of do the business with Mali Liebach later in the game. A lot of tonight will hinge on the performance of Sashfam, Ngomazulu, Sanatla, Ben Loader, Warwick Lance, a nice back three. Dan du Plessis, Slayman Hartzenberg in the midfield is an interesting combo. Hartzenberg's going to have to really pitch up, to be honest. I think that's my big sort of worry if I was a Stormers fan is, if you had seen Damian Willemse at 12 and Dan du Plessis at 13, I'll probably be feeling a little bit more comfortable. But there are players coming off the bench that can make a difference. Joseph Dwyer, Vernon Matonga, Sazi Sandi, lots of experience, Joseph Dwyer, less so in Sazi Sandi and Vernon Matonga, but lots of talent between those two. But then JD Schickling, Connor Evans, Low now, they've gone with a 6-2 split. It's a good 6-2 split. And I think Herschel Yankees and Mali Liebach as well, especially on a 4G pitch, will be able to operate, hoping that it'll be a nice conditions. And I think Mali Liebach, Sashfam Gomezulu wouldn't surprise me to see him go to 12 and Daniel BC go to 13-8 in the game. Mali Liebach come on and try and unlock the defense. And I think Mali Liebach on the bench is a big key, to be honest. I think if he comes on and they're behind, I think he can turn a game around. And what will be interesting is if Stormers get ahead, how well can he and Sasha manage the game? And I also think Warwick London needs to have a big game. But the big thing is the pack needs to give them that platform. There are stars in that backline that can create things. But if they don't have the platform from their forwards, then they're going to struggle. Tomorrow, then, we've got Bulls versus Edinburgh. It's a 1:30 kickoff. It's a bit chilly these days now down in Gauteng, but it'll be nice and warm at about 1 o'clock. So, they will feel the altitude. There's no doubt about that. Dion van der Merwe is set to be make his return against the Bulls. I don't think Edinburgh have actually ever won in Pretoria, so that's very much a stat that the Bulls will want to continue tomorrow, and they need to win a trophy. They're feeling the pressure. I think Jake White's very much feeling the pressure because they haven't been able to deliver the trophy that so many people keep sort of waiting for them to do done since the move to Europe, and they've had their chance with the Challenge Cup, URC finals. So this is now a big opportunity to try and change their fortunes. So I think that the Bulls also, I think from a player personnel point of view, I think big thing will be sort of fly half and where they can manage the game. they've got a good pack and they've got the best scrum in the country, or in the competition. I think, Wilco Lowe, for me, is the URC player of the season. He's been absolutely seismic. And they get that front foot ball at altitude and get players into good space, then they're going to be an absolute handful. Leicester versus Scarlets, I expect that to pretty much be a formality, to be perfectly honest. I think Scarlets have done well to get into that top 8, but I don't expect them to compete against Leinster. Leinster are all in now. They have to be all in on the URC because they let the Champions Cup slip. Weirdly enough for them, they probably could have, if they hadn't let it slip, they could have played their best side against Bordeaux over the weekend, and then probably could have actually rotated against the Scarlets and still gotten a result in the quarterfinals, and then bring back the big guns semi-finals, finals. So the double should have been on for Leinster, but they keep dropping the ball, don't they? And this is now the opportunity to try and finally get that URC trophy. Sharks versus Munster, 3rd versus 6th. Sharks at home should give them an edge, but we know that this is a Shark side that are so inconsistent, that really have struggled to produce performances worthy of the roster that they come into almost every single game with. Eben Etzebeth being back is a huge, huge boost. Expected to go up against Jean Klein this weekend. We need to have our Springboks stand up. Sharks fans need to have their Springboks stand up this weekend. Your Jordan Henderson, Jaden Hendrickses, Lakanya, you need Fussy to really have a good game this weekend. You need your Siaklisi, Eben Etzebeth, Oxenchairs to lead from the front. But when you rattle off those kind of names, your Bongi Benambis and the likes of that, you think surely they should have enough to be able to get the job done and be able to get themselves into semi-final contention and try and go all the way. They've got the best squad in South Africa, but they don't play like they've got the best squad in South Africa. And if they were to start doing that, then there's no doubt that they could be a serious contender to go all the way and to lift that trophy. So it's going to come down, I think, to who rocks up over this weekend. I think the ones that are close to call, Sharks, Munster, Warriors, and Stormers. I think the two middle games, Bulls, for me, should go to get past Edinburgh relatively comfortably, as well as Leinster should get past Scarlets relatively comfortably. And I mean, it does make sense. Your first versus 8th and the second versus 7th expected to be the widest sort of games. But I do think the Stormers are trending the way up, and I think they can give Warriors a go. And I think the Sharks, because they're perennial sort of underperformers, that's where I think Munster will believe that if they can start well, and if they can put the Sharks side under pressure, then they can have a go and they can try and get underneath their skin. Munster are a side that have won this tournament, so it's not like, you should never be writing them off, but they just haven't quite been that Munster the last few years. But it just takes one or two good performances at the right time for you to suddenly walk away with the trophy, and they've definitely got players that are capable of doing just that. My predictions are, I think we're going to see Stormers go through, Bulls, Leinster. Gonna back Sharks, but I think that they, for me, are probably the most likely, weirdly enough, most likely of South African teams maybe not to progress. Even though they're not playing as good a side as the Glasgow Warriors, for example, I feel Stormers have been playing better rugby recently and have been in URC semi-finals, 2 URC finals. They've got players that know how to get to sort of all the way. So that's my predictions. What are your predictions? Let me know down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve, and I'll chat to you soon.